hello. Welcome to the Jazz, Soul and Funk Collection with me, John Birchall. I present a radio show on Radio Bath here in the UK every Monday evening, covering jazz, soul, funk, hip-hop, house and everything in between. And this is an opportunity for me to meet some of the artists. And an artist that I've wanted to speak to for quite a while is Deborah Bond, who is an acclaimed US soul singer. She's a studio artist, a lead and supporting vocalist, an educator, and a radio presenter as well. So she's a woman of many talents. So Deborah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Did I get the presentation of your name correct? It's Deborah, is that correct?
Deborah, yes, it is. Deborah. My British friends love when I do my rendition of the British Deborah. I always say Deborah. Deborah. I love it.
Well, very impressive. Well, what I'm hoping we can do today is talk about your background and how you got into music, also your key influences and some of the artists that you followed throughout the years, your music and your creative approach, any challenges you faced in the industry, and also any bits of advice that you can give to any young artist. That would be great. And we also want to know about any up-and-coming gigs and concerts that we can come along to. So let's kick it off. Tell us about your background, Deborah. I'd love to hear about it. Where are you from, and how did you get into music?
Well, I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, and I was born in the late 70s. So I always believe in my heart that I was born into a very soulful, funky musical time, and had the sounds of so many different types of artists around me as a young person. I didn't traditionally take the normal R&B route, which is for many singers here in the U.S. It's, coming from the church background. I didn't grow up singing in church or anything like that. I really just had a taking to. The music just was something that had a calling on me honestly, since I can remember. There was no real true defining moment where I realized that I enjoyed singing. I really just had that seed planted in me from birth, I believe. By the time I was, school aged, I had an excitement for performing and entertaining. And although I was a little bit of a shy person, slightly, I don't even know if I would say I was shy. I'd be nervous about sharing, but I wasn't. Once I was doing it, it didn't really bother me. But taking that initial step for performing was definitely. I was a little shy with it, and my first memories of being on stage was not even singing. It was actually taking part in what we called public oration contests when I was
probably public speaking. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was doing that at about 8 or 9 years old. I would memorize speeches, powerful speeches, poetry, monologues, and I would compete for the entire school in these contests, and I kept winning. And so
you must say you've got the voice for it. That must be something that led you into singing. The fact that you must have a powerful voice, I'm sure. Well, you have, obviously.
And it was a little person's voice, so I can't even really imagine, what it was like back then. I really wish, that we slightly had a bit of a way to record and film back then, like we have our phones now. Back then in the 80s, we didn't have all that stuff. So it's just memories in my mind at this point. But I really did enjoy speaking in front of crowds and riling people up with my voice, and also with connection to people, with looking you in the eye and speaking to you. So that kind of set things off. And, by the time I was in high school, I was doing musical theater and talent shows. And I found a group of friends that also enjoyed singing. And we started writing songs together. I've been writing songs since I was about 10. And, thanks to the radio and MTV and all of those things, I was just inspired immediately by visual performance and the music video era. yeah, it led me to just dreaming about being an artist. Like I started to really imagine it and dream it, and when I moved to Washington DC, I moved to DC in 1994, and I went to school for journalism and
Yeah.
music and vocal performance. And even through that journey, I was still really not sure what I wanted to do. I knew I really deep inside wanted to be a singer, but I, took the more the approach my family wanted for me more than anything, to get some schooling and focus on journalism a little bit more than music. But it was by that point I met so many people that inspired me that there was really, stopping me at that
It's
point.
it's funny, isn't it? How parents always seem to want you to go down the professional route, the respectable sort of business route. But
Yeah,
I definitely think I'm from the school of thought that you need to follow what you love and what you're good at, and presumably. By the time you got to DC, you were beginning to think that actually it's music for me rather than journalism.
yeah.
So you would have been in your early 20s or something like
Yeah,
that then.
yeah, yeah. That's when it really set off. It was really because I met a lot of musical people. I would find them. I would find them. And DC, contrary to what people may think, because DC is really known for the political aspect. The politics and is here, and the White House is here. There's a thriving art scene in DC. And when I moved here in the early '90s, it was really, oh man, you had the go-go was thriving, and but we also had a lot of hip hop and punk music and funk and jazz, and poetry was also a big thing and at that time. So it was anywhere I could be amongst the artists and the music, I was trying to be there. And I met a great group of people that inspired me to just take it more seriously at that time.
Is that when you met? I think I was reading up a little bit, and you met. Is it Third Logic, the production team, or was that a bit later on?
It was a bit later on. Well, actually, no, not too late, because by the time I was done with school, I was floating trying to figure out work. I wasn't working in my field at all. And yeah, probably, yeah, it was my early 20s when I would happen to be in a studio with one of my friends from school, college, and she had me singing some backgrounds, and there was a guy there that was playing guitar, and he was phenomenal, and we exchanged information. He actually gave me a ride to the subway back so I could get home, and we were chatting about his funk band. And the story is so crazy because I saw him again at a show, and I said, man, I really would love to connect with you and talk, chat about your band. And he was like, wow, three of us are creating a production team, and we're looking for people, and you're really great. And we ended up staying in touch, and coincidentally we ended up dating,
Oh,
and he was 1/3 of Third Logic. And so
yeah.
yeah.
So had you actually performed as a soul singer by the time you met them, or was that
Hmm.
just you had? So when just going back a little bit, I mean,
Yeah.
when did you first perform then? Was that when you were in, I mean, as a soul singer, as
Hmm.
opposed to, was that when you were in Washington, DC, or was that,
Definitely DC. When I was in
yeah,
Connecticut, it was mainly like talent shows and musical theater. But when I got to DC, before I met Third Logic, a friend of mine from Connecticut, he moved to DC like my senior year of high school. And when I came down, he was here, and he told me about his younger brother who was a classically trained pianist, and he was saying that his brother was trying to start a group. So I met his brother, and his brother introduced me to his younger brother and another drummer, and they were saying that they were trying to do a Fuji's kind of, have a rapper, have a singer, live band. And so we got together, and we that was really my very first, I mean, my first performing band, was with them, and it was a fun time. We were very, very young, and we were performing anywhere we could in DC,
in bars and things
bars
like
and
that? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, little small clubs. And we there was this really interesting spot bookmark it, because we'll come back around to it with my new music. But there's a spot in DC that's kind of infamous, called House of Secrets. And
Right.
it was a speakeasy in DC, not far from Howard University, that would throw these really interesting parties. I mean, like invite only, there'd be celebrities and all kinds of folks. And one of the members of the band was like, I have to take you somewhere. I want to show you something. And it was literally across the street from his parents' house. So I'm like, we're going to your friend's house, or what's happening here? And when I went inside, it was like Studio 54
Oh my God.
meets something out of New Orleans.
Oh my God.
Birds and beads and lights, and I was in love. They knew this was going to speak to me personally, and we would perform there all the time. We
Fantastic.
got in really good with the owner. He loved what we were doing, and so that was the very beginning. Was with them. We called ourselves 420 Lauda,
Oh wow.
Lauda.
Wow. And are you
Yeah.
still in touch with them?
Still
Are
in
you
touch
still,
with them. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Are they
Actually,
performing still or?
the drummer has made quite a bit of waves because he's an educator, he's a writer, he has a lot of controversial music out there that's centering around activism and awareness. And so he's still out on the scene. And the pianist opened a music school that I
Yeah.
ended up working for, teaching voice lessons a few, maybe 7 years back. He's doing wonderful with his music school. I was just in his music video as his love interest for a song he released last year. And so, and then the rapper, he has moved heavily into film. And so
Yeah.
he actually did a lot of content for my next record that's coming out. So all of us
Oh,
are still,
fantastic.
we're all still here.
Well, it's great, isn't it? I mean, I think being part of an artistic community is amazing. I mean, I'm afraid, not that you want to hear about me, but I went into the law. I'm a lawyer, which is sign of a sort of a misspent sort of career, I think. But my son's trying to make it in the music business, so
Yeah.
I can relate to what it must be like. Growing up in a community of talented people. So it must have been really inspiring to do that. And did you, at that point in time, did it cross your mind that you wanted to make a record and that sort of thing, or
Yeah.
was that always a dream? Or
Always a dream. Always a dream. I had already, like, by the time I was in high school, I was doing so much in high school. I was working a job, running track and field, and going to school. And I saved my money and bought myself a karaoke machine that had two tape decks. And I would, that was back when the singles would have an instrumental on the other side of the tape. You'd have
yeah,
this, and so I would take the instrumental side, I'd load that up, I'd take a blank tape, I record myself on the blank tape, take that tape, take another tape, record myself. I would overdub with my
that's great.
and so I taught myself about recording and overdubbing by the time I was like, 16, 17. So when I met with 420 Lauda, we had already started experimenting with little multi-track things and beat machines and recording wherever we could. And from moving from them, I also connected with a bunch of artists at American University where I went to school, and we really tapped into getting computers and like trying, this was the beginning of the technology wave. And we were recording ourselves in closets. I was literally just listening to one of my first recordings like yesterday that we did freestyling in a closet, and so I knew that eventually I really wanted, by the time I got to Third Logic, I wanted a serious project. I mean, the quality of those old tapes was horrible, but still, they mean so much to me still. But
Well, well, it's all
mhm.
this. It's the first part of your journey when you think
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? You always have a vision. I think that of how you want your career to be, but it's almost taking those small steps first of all that you have to go through to get there.
yeah, yeah. You have to just be very, very driven, I will say, and excited. You have to start with the excitement before anything else. And during that time, it really was an exciting time. When by the time I got to working with Third Logic and we had demoed a few songs, I knew that they wanted to do a project with me. I wanted to do a project with them. I felt like they were like my musical soulmates. They had a mixture of like funk, soul, little bit of a pocket, deep, what we call the DC pocket, little go-go pocket. Um, and little edges of psychedelic rock, and so
Yeah.
they just had everything I wanted. And so I applied for grants, and I received two grants from the DC Commission of the Arts and Humanities, which I'm so thankful for to this day, because that funded the first record, that funded Day
Well,
After.
oh, Day After, and that was back
Yeah.
in 2003, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
think
Well, yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Quite a while ago, but that's great to get that funding. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, you sound like you were very resourceful with your recording, trying to find support, hooking up with people, networking. You have
Yeah.
to do all these things in the industry, don't you, to give yourself a
Yeah.
chance?
You really do, and it still stands to this day. I'm still that way, and it's led me to even more beautiful heights. And so, I'm a bit of a grassroots person by nature. I don't have the machine that a lot of the bigger artists have. So I
No,
kind of create my own machine, or I create my tribe. I find my tribe, and I whatever however I can learn. I'm not afraid to ask questions, you know what I mean? I'm not afraid to say, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I need this for this next step, so can you help me? Or can I bring you on board and give you some love and some credit and let you use your skills? I'm always been that way. I'm from a big family, I think. Maybe it's partly that.
it's great. You've got to be resourceful, but it's fantastic to hear how you've managed to sort of work so hard to get where you are. I suppose one
Yeah.
of the things I'd love to hear is
Mhm.
I love jazz, soul, and funk, and any sort of associated music, and I got into it in the '70s, listening to
Mhm.
Earth, Wind and Fire, Marvin
Yes.
Gaye, Stevie Wonder, and this was in the UK. All my friends were into the punk scene,
Yeah,
and I just couldn't get enough of MFSB and that Philly sound and
Yes.
all of that great stuff. So I'd love to hear what your influences were.
Ooh.
Which pieces of music or which tracks or artists really sort of were great for you as you were growing up.
So many. I'm so thankful that I grew up, that I was born in the 70s, and really became, my ear opened up really in the 80s. And so it was, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Like, I mean, off the top of my head, I was really enamored by Whitney Houston.
Yeah,
And I still am. I will be forever. I mean, all of the holy grail of soul, and the Black artists that were allowed on MTV, because it wasn't until adulthood that I realized how difficult it was for them to get their videos. But like Prince and Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson in particular, Sade was a huge one for me. I just loved her elegance and her classiness and her sophistication, and the music. But then I had, I love music so much. I also had a lot of male. What I'm realizing about myself as an adult is that I had a lot of male vocalist influence on the way I sing now. Luther
yeah,
Vandross was a really big
yeah,
influence, and he still is a big influence. Stevie Wonder is probably one of my biggest, as far as the way
yeah.
I ad lib and the way I emote when I sing. Really, Stevie and Michael have a huge influence on that. But then I also had like a heavy love for like all the stuff new wave. I was really into the Eurythmics. I'm a huge
Oh
Annie
wow,
Lennox fan, love her.
yeah.
I Duran and Tears for Fears, all of the
Oh my.
what we feel was the British invasion of the 80s.
Well, you'll be interested to know that Tears for Fears are from Bath, and one of my co-presenters is the brother of one of the band. So we've got a very close connection with Tears for
I
Fears.
love that band. I've performed their music, Tears for Fears, and then of course the really really big one was for me was George Michael. Really loved
Oh yeah.
George Michael. Just one of the strongest vocalists,
Oh
that I got to grow up and see and watch him evolve from Wham. And so it's like all over the place, because it's a bit of soul. Shaka was huge on me, but my father, my uncle, they were big funk heads. So and there's different types of funk. I loved Earth, Wind and Fire, and I loved Shaka's form of funk. But I was, also really into Parliament Funkadelic.
yes, yeah.
All of that, Bootsy Collins,
Oh yeah.
Sly, all of that. So for me, any given day, like I find so much joy when I have a day off, just sitting around and saying, like to myself, what do I want to hear now? And then there's a whole nother edge. I was really big into White Snake.
Oh my God.
I was really big into Fleetwood Mac. I was really big into Heart, Rat. I was a very musical young person, and I would listen, I would pretend, I would pretend I was performing it on stage. The Jets, all of the groups, New Edition. I was obsessed with anything that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produced. So yeah, I could go. And these are all serious influences on me, like serious.
Well, I know what you mean. I mean, it's in a sense, it's so difficult to have a sort of a narrow perspective of music, isn't it? It was funny before the last act that I interviewed, are called Bolden, and they're sort of a jazz house act, and they've really developed very quickly over a year or two. But I was speaking to one of them. There are two of them in the act, and one of them was saying that she was into heavy rock, and even though she's a jazz player, so I think it's very easy to be influenced from across the genres, really.
Oh yeah. I just love music so much. I'm just very addicted to it, and so I just really am thankful that I had such a variety to hear on the radio at that time. Just Kenny Loggins, another one. I'm really big into Hall and Oates. So many Genesis. Oh, it's just watching this story about Genesis and Peter Gabriel. Mind blowing. I just did an 80s show that did really well here in DC, and like we went from everywhere from SOS Band to Journey, to what's my song, Bring Me a Higher Love, like just so you're never gonna know what you're gonna get with me.
Actually, one of the things I want to come on to actually is you've been great at sort of collaborating with artists over the years. I mean, the obvious one is Incognito, but you've got Zoe and Tool Black Guy, Melba Moore, and more recently people like Misha and Jussi Halme, and also Fook as well. These are sort of new and up and coming artists. So I'd love to hear about some of these collaborations and how they came about. Maybe we can start with Incognito and then cover some of the others too.
Incognito is probably the most organic of everything, of all of the collabs. Everything else was definitely a sign of the times, but with Incognito, it was just literally the blessing of my job at the time. I spent 10 years working at Sirius XM satellite radio, and that put me in a position to be around so many artists, because any given day we'd have an artist there for interviews or for performances. And I remember I was working for one of the stations, Watercolors, which is primarily like smooth jazz, acid jazz. And so I remember I was working for that station as a production assistant, like doing all the technical behind the scenes stuff. I was not on air at that time. And I remember knowing that Incognito was coming to town, coincidentally, because someone I had been working with through jazz festivals, being booked as a performer and as a presenter, asked me if I would be interested in hosting a really big show with Incognito and Robert Glasper at this big theater. And so they were in town for that. And I was so excited because one, I get to bring out two of my favorite acts, Incognito and Robert Glasper. But then I also knew he was coming to the station. And so I met him on a cruise, actually, the Capital Jazz cruise, and I handed him day after. I was like stalking them all. They were like walking around on the boat, and I'm like, "Oh, excuse me, don't want to bother you. Can I give you my CD?" And left him alone. And then he came to the station maybe a year or two later, and I was working on Madame Palindrome, and or maybe Madame Palindrome had just actually been released, because I think I handed him day after and a sampler of the new music. And when he came into the lobby, and he recognized me. This is Bluey.
Yeah.
This is Bluey, my guy. He comes into the lobby and he recognizes me, and he says, "You're the singer. I met you." And I said, "Yeah, I gave you my music." He's like, "Madame Palindrome," and he was telling me that they had been listening to it. And I remember freaking out, like, what? Okay. And I was like, well, I'm going to be helping with your interview, so let me bring you up to the studio. And he's like getting prepared, chatting with the host, and he's just staring at me, and he's like, so this is what you do for a living? Like, he thought, I was a full-time singer, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I have a job, and he was really just kind of in awe of that. And he said, we should do something together. He said this on the air, like throughout the interview. He kept stopping, like, she's just sitting there, like, checking my levels, and, like, why is she doing this? She has great music out. And so he said it on the air. He said, I think we should do some music together. And I said, I would, be honored. And later that night, I hosted the show, and definitely Madame Palindrome was out, because he came out on the stage and he said, that young lady who just beautifully introduced us and brought us out has a new album called Madame Palindrome, and it's one of the best albums I've heard all year, and all of you
Wow.
in this, you should all buy it.
That's
I'm just
incredible, isn't it?
standing on the side of the stage like,
That's fantastic, isn't it?
so he did what he said he was going to do, which I didn't think, because sometimes in the industry, we don't we have, I'll have my people call your people, and it never happens. But
Yeah,
Bluey,
exactly.
he sent me a track, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I remember trying to figure out what I was going to write for it, and I had a conversation with my mom, and it started in one direction, and we kind of shifted it into this really positive, like, uplifting, we're going to be okay, like, let's just think positive. We were just encouraging each other. When I hung up the phone, I looked out the window, and there's this big burst of sun that came through,
I
and I
see the
thought,
sun.
I see the sun. It shines a little brighter. I took the time to just, like, relax my mind. And, like, from that conversation with my mom, I wrote the whole song in about 20 minutes right then.
Fantastic.
Bluey loved
Well,
it. There we go. There we go.
it's a great track, I must admit, and
Thank you.
interestingly enough, it's opening up my radio show tomorrow. So love that track. So looking
Thank
forward to
you.
hearing that.
Thank you.
And then you obviously you've the relationship has grown, because I think for many years you've been sort of performing with them, and I understand I've been following you. You've just come back from Japan, I think.
Yeah, they gave me the gift of a lifetime. I quit my job in the end of 2015, and by the summer of 2016, I got an offer to do a world tour with Incognito. It was just, the
Oh
timing
my
was
God.
perfect. And Australia and Japan and Hawaii and the whole USA, and I'd never done that before. And so that was the beginning of, I mean, I had done some spot dates with them where I would just sing
Yeah.
one song, one or two songs, but the tour was, the real deal. And it was just one of the best moments of my life. The group, Incognito, you never know who's going to be on the road with them.
Yeah,
That's why,
that's
that's why
right.
they're incognito.
Yeah.
But that particular group was one of the most, we just had a lot of fun. You hear tour horror stories, and this just was not it. We had such a
Yeah.
blast and hung out together, and so I am always here for them and love them so much. And I love Bluey, and I love Mesa. Mesa's right here in Maryland where I live.
Yeah, Mesa Leak. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So when you went on tour, were you were the two of you there, and is that how it works, or?
Yeah, well, that first tour, I think Mesa was not on that one, that very first world tour. Um, but then moving forward, a lot of the American stops, she was joining us. And then my first, like, really international travel with her was last December in Japan. Usually I've toured with her in the US, but
Yeah.
never overseas. So Japan it was her first time with Incognito there in many, many years. It was a very sentimental, beautiful trip, because she had her son there,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
he was 25. He's 25 now, and he was on the road with us. And she presented him like, my water broke on stage at Blue Note 25 years ago. He was 3
Oh my
years, he
God.
was 3 months premature, and
Yeah.
so they saved his life in Japan. So
Yeah.
it was really sentimental being there with them for that last tour. And they know I'm here whenever they need me. They just are returning from South Africa, I believe, right now. So I'm missing them, wishing I was there. But
Yeah.
Yeah, with the more current collaborations with Misha Beats and with Fook, and even with Soul Dynamic out of Italy, and newly with Bersi Temesky out of Hungary. All of
Yeah.
those connections came from the internet. All of them came from social media.
It's
Ev-
incredible, isn't it?
yeah,
And what an opportunity. I mean, the internet presents, I mean, I know there are lots of issues and problems with the internet, but it just presents so many opportunities as well, doesn't it?
yeah.
So,
You got to get from it what you can. It's definitely not my favorite place to navigate these days. I'll be
mm,
honest, but
yeah, yeah.
it really did. Spotify. My song "Stride" from my last record came on a playlist on Spotify, and Misha heard it, and he reached out to me he DM'd me on Instagram and said, I heard a song of yours called "Stride," and it's really good. It spoke to me. I'd love to work with you. And the internet's tricky because anyone can reach out, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I did a little research and I was like, oh, he's got some good stuff. And then he told me he wanted a singer for a song with a rapper named Odyssey. And then I know Odyssey personally.
Yeah. Oh,
he's,
wow.
so it was so crazy. I was like, oh, this guy's okay. And Odyssey, doesn't work with just anyone. So I knew,
Yeah, yeah.
and we did a song called Slippin', where I did the hook for that. And then from that point on, Misha was like, we got to do some more songs together. And
Yeah,
A
yeah.
Night in Rio was just, I went to New York
Love
to
that
meet
song.
him. He
Yeah.
was in America. He happened to come to America.
That's it, because
And
he's from Finland, isn't he? I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's so ambitious and he's so talented and he's so just ready and motivated. And when he told me he'd be coming to New York, we planned it so that I could go there and we just try to knock the song out in a day. And so I was writing the song on the train from DC to New York. I kept hearing the All I Do Is Daydream. I kept hearing that melody in my mind, and so
Mm.
I wrote about a good 90% of it on the train and then wrote the rest in the studio. We did it all in one day and it did so well. And and
It's a
now we
great
have
track.
quite a few more tracks coming. So
It's
yeah.
great. It's
Mm.
great. So, do you think, thinking about your career now and your future, have you've obviously got some new music to release, but how do you see your career sort of panning out? I mean, uh, presumably more collaborations.
Yes, definitely more. I mean, I have so many goodness, I have so many that I'm like trying to get to. I have like a checklist of songs that I'm supposed to finish. Anyone who works with me knows I'm like a very ponderer. Like when I write, I'm not the one that writes the song in a minute. Like, so writing a song like I See the Sun, writing
Hmm.
that in like 15 minutes is unheard of for me. I take quite a bit of time to write and arrange, and so I have quite a few people waiting on me to get songs done. And then I'm definitely got my hands in a lot of things. But right now, I'm definitely my biggest focus is my own new music. I've done last year, especially the last 2 years. I've done so many collaborations um, that I've kind of put my own next project off
Hmm.
to the side a bit, and so I'm just ready to get more of my own stuff out and get back on the road doing my own music. And so I'm about 75% done with my next record. I'm finally getting the timeline together. I mean, 2 years ago I thought the album would be out in like 2023. I thought it would be out in 2024. And here we are, 2025. So
How many
I'm
tracks are you hoping to? Is it going to be an album or an EP?
It's gonna be an album. I'm not really an EP girl. We're looking at 9 tracks, but I'm hoping for 10.
Yeah.
And this is still very new for me because my first 2 albums were not like this because I had Third Logic. But this album has quite a few producers on it.
Right.
Um, and amazing. I'm all about the musicians. I wish I continued playing piano when I was 10 years old and gave it up for karate because I really wish I could play an instrument. So I love musicianship, and so I like to highlight the best, And so
Yes.
this album has a lot of just talent on it as far as the bands and and it was definitely something that came together where I'd call this one and they'd lay down their track, and it's a bit of a Rubik's cube, trying to get it
Yeah.
together, but it's finally coming along, and I'm really excited about it. It's very, very rich and soulful and vintage, very classic Deborah, I will say.
So,
Honest.
so you can't tell us what it's called yet. Have you got a name for the album
I've
yet?
had a name for a while. The crazy thing is I took the album art pictures and everything 2 years ago. So I'm like
Oh wow.
trying to, make sure I lift my weights and eat my vegetables so I don't look much different than I did. A lot can change in 2 years.
Yeah,
But yes, I have a title. I'm gonna it's coming very soon.
yeah,
When once the first single drops, which I'm hoping for in sometime in like late June. Um then I'm just trying to push the gas because I've been kind of dancing around getting it out, and a lot of that also is like the downside of social media is that's what's I would have to say has held me up a bit. um Social media will have you, when you're asking about challenges,
yeah,
it's a psychological challenge for a lot of artists, when it comes to comparing yourself, feeling like you're not worthy, or feeling like, what am I going to do to stand out? There's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
music out there, and it can get us in our heads, and I'm no
There's
stranger
almost
to
too
that.
much you're made aware of the competition, aren't you? It's
Yes.
almost sort of overwhelming, isn't it? When you
Yes.
and I suppose that's difficult to sort of it's difficult to find a space for yourself where you feel comfortable, where you can grow. It's
Yeah, and you see the
I
trends, and if I don't usually fit into trends, so there's that. I don't sing like a lot of what I'm hearing is doing well right now. I don't have that kind of tone, and I don't have that kind of vocal style, and I've definitely kind of had to have my own self talk, and just remind myself that who I am is fine, and my eccentricities and all of the things that make me different are the things that are I need to hold on to and not try to sound like everyone else. But with social media and the way the music industry is moving, you're sometimes made to feel like you do need to sound like everyone else.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's been a bit of the holdup. And then on top of that, it's not a very lucrative time for us here. Touring is expensive. If you are the front person, it's really expensive, because you have to you're where a lot of us are just funding these tours out of our pockets, and
yeah.
studio time and all of that. So that's also been a holdup, is having I'm thinking about crowdfunding next month to finish the record, because
Wow,
I need
yeah,
help. I need
yeah.
help. So
I was going
yeah.
to ask you about that because this a lot of people self-release or they release through distributors, or if you're lucky you get one of the bigger labels. But how you found that? I mean, are you going to self-release this, or are you going to release through a label, or
I'm not sure. My last record was released through Splash Blue, which is,
okay,
Bluey's affiliated with that label, and it was great. It was a quick turnaround with that.
mm,
Um, but at the same time, a lot of the work falls on the artist, even with the label, unless you have like a bigger
yeah,
label. If you have
yeah,
an indie
absolutely,
label, you're still going to be doing a lot of the legwork.
yeah,
And so I think I'm
I,
gonna probably do an indie, maybe, unless
yeah,
someone out of the blue calls me and says
yeah.
they love me.
It's funny actually. I mean, I have a little bit of contact with the industry. As I say, my son's trying to make it in the business as well,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
I know how difficult it is. You sign with a label and you think, great, this is it, and labels can be pretty sort of flaky, can't they? And you don't always get what you expect, and
mhm.
it's tough for artists, But so I suppose learning from your experiences. I mean, it would be great if you had any messages for young artists. What any recommendations you could make about how to keep sane while you're trying to make it.
Oh, I have to always lean on a few things. I do a lot of mentoring here in DC, and I always go back to the why. Why do you want to do this? Is it, is it in your heart, or is it in your ego? Do you want to be famous, or do you want to make impact? Like, what is it? Figure out
Yeah,
the why. And think of the why, because the why is really the thing that's going to keep you going in the darkest of the times, in trying to hold on to that childlike place. it has been chipped away from me for many years now, being in the industry for 20, 25 years, that innocence that I had back in the day. But I, I use my mind, and I use, some of the reminiscent energy to like keep myself a bit excited, um, and we have to, I would always advise, like, figure out the things that make you tick, like that give you some oomph, that make you
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really excited about it, and try to hold on to that. And also to find a mentor. It's
yes,
really good to have someone who's kind of has some experience to ask some questions, and which is why I really openly and willingly have been mentoring some young artists in the area. And I don't worry about money. I just want to help them. If I believe in them, I want them to be able to, vent to me or ask me questions. So find a mentor. And then, two other things: study like crazy.
yeah,
Because to me, if those who study the greats tend to be great, and those who listen to everything can pull from everything. Don't be a one trick pony. Don't have a one track mind. Like, learn, and don't feel like, oh, this music is old. Don't worry about the age of anything.
yeah.
Um, and be driven. You do have to really be driven, and you can't be afraid to network, and you have to get out your own head. I do think that we have, a time, this industry now, um because of social media, and not even that, just because we live on our phones and everything, people don't have people skills. The people skills
No,
have changed.
yes.
We had times back in the day where we had to, like, you had to face things head on. You couldn't hide behind your
You had to
phone.
communicate, didn't you? You had to really communicate and
it,
interact with
it,
people, and
it that helped me. The way I can get in a room and not be afraid of it, and be in a room with, you know uh, I've been in the room with big people now, and I may not, be on their level per se, but in my mind I am there. And so,
yes,
and
of
and, and
course.
I, so I I would always encourage young people to lift your head out of your phone and be
Yeah,
looking eyes, and feel, and speak, and network, because it is all about, your community, and how, how you can work together. None of us can do this by ourselves. We can't do it alone.
no. Well,
Mm.
that's great advice, and I hope we can share some of that through the internet. But it's absolutely, it never fails to inspire me. The people I meet in the industry who are so community spirited and who are looking to help other people as well, and it's great to hear that, Deborah.
Yeah.
So really, I suppose what I'd love to hear is, can we see you soon? When are there any gigs, and when are you coming back to Europe? You're,
Oh, I
you
want
know,
to be there now. That's a good question. I'm hoping when my next record drops that
yes,
that I'll start working on a little tour over there. It's the UK is like my number two market in the world.
yes,
So I have a special place in my heart, and I always tend to get the invitations to collab more so than anyone else from people out of America. So I'm
yeah,
trying, I'm trying to get back to the UK as soon as possible. I'll be in South Africa with Zoe and Tall Black Guy this fall, which I'm really
great,
excited about. I'll be returning there for goodness. I've been to Africa about 4 times, so this will be my fifth time there. And uh lots of things happening locally. A lot of the festivals love, I we put on a good festival type show. I like big
yeah,
stages and big crowds, as much as I love intimate crowds as well. But so I'm doing some work here for Pride in June in the Maryland area. And a lot of the black, historically black, fraternities and sororities have been wanting me to perform for some of their big events. So I have a couple of those things happening. And then I have a really cool show at the end of the summer where I'll be sharing the stage with a longtime friend of mine, Mamuna Mumu Fresh, who is a phenomenal singer, rapper. She's like a sound bather. She's like a Renaissance queen. And we've known each other since the beginning of our careers. And so she's Grammy nominated. She's worked with some of the best in hip hop, especially. And so I'm so excited to share the stage with her, because that's like my sister girl. So we have a big show at the end of the summer. But besides that, it's all about this music, trying to get the album done. I'm really excited about this first single. I really think the UK is going to probably soak it up. It's fun, it's light, it's all about House of Secrets. uh,
When can we expect to hear that then?
June,
Oh wow,
maybe
great,
early July, but that will be the very latest. Yeah,
great.
I'm very excited, and lots of beautiful visuals and things to come along with it, and and I'm dedicating it to Roy Ayers. Yeah, he
Oh,
was
fantastic.
he was the inspiration for the song.
Roy Ayers is amazing. I saw him on his world tour last
Yeah.
year before his passing, and
Yeah.
you know, he struggled to get to the front of the stage, but
Mhm.
his support band was fabulous, and his music is just incredible, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Roy Ayers, one of the greatest of all time.
I opened for him once in my life at a really big festival here in DC about maybe 6, 7 years ago. One of the greatest nights of my life.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Deborah, I've got to say, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you and learning about your career. And you're a real inspiration to artists in your field, but generally. And I would really encourage people to go onto Spotify and look at Deborah's back catalogue, and also wait for that new release in June. So really looking forward to hearing more from you, Deborah, and looking forward to when you can come over to the UK, because it'll be great to see you.
Cannot wait, and you'll be one of the first to get your ears on the new single. I got
you. Well, thanks, Deborah. Lovely to see you, and great to meet you. Thanks so much.
Very nice to meet you, John. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Always daydream that one night with you. Nothing else to do but to sing the simple song. All I do is daydream when we'll meet again. My very special friend. Hope it won't be too long. Lost in the mystery. So many words unspoken leave me short.